Hey guys, how are you doing? I hope you've been having a lovely day. I didn't get to put up the video that I wanted to put up for you guys today because my editor that normally shoots and edits my things, Michael Livingston, he injured his back horribly and he cracked a vertebrae. Not my fault, I promise. I'm sure he would appreciate if you sent some get well soon messages on his breakfast for dinner YouTube site. You go to youtube.com/breakfastfordinner. I'm sure he would appreciate it if you said, get well soon to him. So because I have limited time, I thought that I would turn this video into that list of books that you guys wanted me to give you. I think I'll do a few of these videos because there are so many books that I love, but I'm going to give you a list of, I think, 9 today. And then from that selection, you should be able to pick something that suits your taste, I think. And tomorrow I will be giving you an e-card. I know you haven't had an e-card in a long time, but there's going to be one tomorrow. So that will be your video for tomorrow. And then I have one more day in my video every day list. And then I'll be able to do them like normal. It's really hard doing a video every day. It sounds stupid to complain about, but it's a lot to keep on top of and keep track of and stuff. I have new respect for daily vloggers like Shay Carl. But here is my list of fabulous books. Ready? Ready? Ready. So first on this list, I thought that I would start by talking about Leslie's book. Remember we met Leslie, I think 4 days ago now. She's my friend who's an author, and she wrote a book called Once Every Never, which has a character with my name in it, which is really exciting. But I wanted to bring this up because I actually really love this book and would recommend it to anyone. And historical fiction is one of my favorite genres of writing. This is a great version of it, perfect for introductory works about certain historical time periods, I think, like anything to do with the Roman Empire leading into King Arthur. So I thought that I would give you a couple of... I'm obsessed with King Arthur. I guess I will just admit it here now. I don't think I've talked about it before, but I've read most books that don't have bodice-ripping ladies on the cover about King Arthur, and even some that do. But this is like my obsessive-compulsive area of history. This is the part that I like to look back on and hear investigations about and am really interested in. So I think Once Every Never is a great jumping-off point into 2 other historical fiction books, which I love a lot. Number 1 is The Crystal Cave by Mary Stuart. This was the very first King Arthur book I ever read. I think I read it when I was maybe 11, but it's an adult book, so it's for anyone. And it's beautifully written. It gives you a real sense of the world at that time. There's a sense of pageantry and magic and so much power, how power was changing at the time, and there are great characters, female and male. You will fall in love with the character of Merlin. He's amazing. It's another great jumping off point for the love of the Arthur, and a great sinking in point, I think, if you're into King Arthur, is The Mists of Avalon by Marion Zimmer Bradley. I think I read this book when I was 16. It's an adult book too. It's not a young adult book, but totally readable for teens, I think. It's very romantic, very mysterious. It really delves into the history and rituals of the Druids in a fascinating way, in a very romantic way. Really beautiful. The imagery that this book conjures up and the romance in it are just, they'll stay in your heart for a lifetime, man. They will. So I would like to recommend that one as well. So those are my historical fiction picks for this video. I highly recommend all 3 of those. Next, I thought that it would be fun to recommend a couple of nonfiction books for people who don't really want to read novels per se. One of my very, very favorite nonfiction books is called A Natural History of the Senses by Diane Ackerman. She talks about each of our human senses, but she's a poet, so the way she investigates scientifically all of our senses is transformed into this prose that's just, you could just sink your teeth into it. There's a whole chapter about vanilla that will make you just want to make love to a vanilla bean, pretty much. Yeah, highly recommend. Even if you don't read the whole book, just read the chapter on vanilla. It'll make you happy, I promise. Yeah, so this is a great nonfiction book. The other one that I would like to recommend is Cleopatra, A Life by Leslie Schiff. I actually only just started reading this last month, It's really interesting. There are things that I already knew about Cleopatra, like that she was originally Greek in her ancestry, but I didn't know so many things. Like, one of the few things that I learned in the first few pages were that the reason why she was genetically Greek is because when Alexander conquered that whole part of the world, he just kind of gave Egypt to his friend, the guy who's played by Jared Leto in the movie, so I'm sure that he looked exactly like that in real life. Anyway, that guy, he got to just have Egypt as his prize for helping to win all those wars. So he had learned at the time that there were brother-sister pharaohs, so he sort of fashioned himself as that, and then gave birth to a long line of murderous sibling kings and queens, of which Cleopatra was one. She ended up killing most of her siblings. Interesting, right? This is very sordid. This whole time period in Egypt, very sordid. Interestingly, though, Cleopatra was the first person in her lineage for many, many hundreds of years to even bother to learn Egyptian. Everyone else spoke Greek. Can you imagine someone trying to rule the country that you're living in and they didn't even speak your language? This book is just filled with interesting facts and is so detailed and totally scientific, not taking any rumor for granted, really delving into each story and making sure it's true and telling us what isn't true for sure and saying maybe the rumor is true because of these 5 facts. Maybe it's not true because of these other 5 facts. Really, really interesting. So if you're interested in history and Cleopatra, this is the book for you. So those are my 2 non-fiction-y picks. The next section is going to be 4 fiction books. These are 4 of my big-time faves. So here we go. Number 1, I've discussed this before with you guys, is The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay by Michael Chabon. Also, so poetically written. So many scenes in this book are so visually startling when you imagine them in your brain. It's filled with, like, sexy, interesting characters, and it's about these 2 teenage boys, one of whom has escaped Nazi Europe and has come to New York to live with his cousin, and they go off and embark on a comic book career that takes them through the golden age of comics. I don't want to go too much into the plot of any of the books because it'll be more exciting for you guys when you get to them if you read them to find out yourself, but Joseph Cavalier is one of my favorite characters ever in any book. I'm like madly in love with him pretty much. He's amazing. Just the journey that he goes through in this book and the way he deals with his circumstances are unusual and incredible. They're amazing adventures. I recommend reading this book and finding out what they are. Yay, there we go. Speaking of amazing adventures, the next book I am going to suggest is called Jitterbug Perfume by Tom Robbins. This book, I feel like this book sort of changed the way I viewed life. Tom Robbins has a very specific point of view when he writes. It's always the same juicy love of language and deep love of people with their flaws. He allows his characters to have their flaws and just goes with them. You'll find characters in his books that will never be the staple character on a TV show. They will probably never even be in a movie unless it's a movie adaptation of a Tom Robbins novel. They're so unique, so real, so much more than what most people write as characters. Gorgeous writing, but also so playful. This is the most playful book. It talks about immortality and what we're here for and things about gods and religion and so many interesting, like, idea things, but it's all presented in the sauciest, most playful way you can imagine. So I can't recommend this book highly enough. Definitely read it, and if you've already read this one, then I would move on to another Tom Robbins novel. If you haven't read one yet and you're going to read this one, welcome to the Tom Robbins period in your life, because you're going to want to read more of his books. If you're in a Tom Robbins mood but have read all of Tom Robbins' books, I recommend White Teeth by Zadie Smith. She also has that same playful sense of language. I'm sure she's been compared to him a few times, but her subject matter is very different. She grew up in England, and this book is about immigrants in England and what it's like, but crazy what it's like, with juicy, saucy, insane characters. And the way she writes, sometimes it's very narrative, and then she'll get to a chunk where it's almost like beat poetry, and you're like snapping along to the story that she's splashing in front of your imagination. I don't know if that makes any sense, but her book is really good and I recommend that you read it. And the last book that I would like to recommend is very special. It's called Possession by A.S. Byatt. This book is very, very long, so it's going to be intimidating to a few of you. I was told that it's a very dense book and that it's hard to get through. I can't disagree more. I didn't even notice that it was long. It's about two characters who are on the search for a fictional author's previous work and relationships. A.S. Byatt actually writes the found materials. So you get to read poems and excerpt by this writer that was lauded for being amazing. But A.S. Byatt is writing them. Great characters, and it's sort of an investigation story, so I love detective stories. I know a lot of people love detective stories. They're very popular on television. There's got to be a reason why. People like mysteries, and they want to find out what happens at the end. This book is like that. It's like a detective story, only it's about the human heart and finding literature, which sounds dry and boring, but this book is not either of those things. Really fun. So those are my recommendations. I hope that you decide one of them sounds appealing to you, and if none of them do, let me know what kind of genre you're looking to read, or if you have any book recommendations now that I've listed mine for me. I would love to actually get recommendations from you guys. Let me know what you're reading and what you love. Love. I don't want any likes. Don't give me books that you kind of like. Give me your favorite books. Okay? Let's share. This will be fun. So tomorrow you'll get an e-card. Now you will get fist kisses. Butterfly kisses, Eskimo kisses, and elephant kisses. And I'll see you tomorrow.